last for this year. I'll declare the meeting open and read the civic affirmation. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our benefit of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet here today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Councillors, welcome. Item 1 I have is apologies. Councillor Bland is an apology now, I understand. I have no one signified acknowledgements. Number 3, declarations of conflict of interest. Anyone got any conflicts of interest they feel they need to declare at this stage? None. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting, including the confidential minutes, please, held on the 19th of November. Councillors Qualman and Maidment, any discussion?
No.
Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 5, adjourned business. I have nil. Item 6.1, Mayor's report. 6.1, Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2, firstly, November the 18th, meeting with MP Claire Scribble and regional councils from the Murray-Darlings Basin discussion in Adelaide. Thank you.
Yes. The state government's doing work, put a business case around, through PIRSA, around both compensation for the loss or the buying back of water.
Yes.
The federal government's program to claim back 450. And so this meeting was in relation to that, I'm reasonably sure. Yes, we got that right. Yeah. And I don't quite know when that business case is lodged with the federal government, but we've been part of that process of advisement, I suppose, or consultation.
Mayor, my understanding is that the business case will go to the state government before Christmas, which basically is in the next week or so, if it hasn't already, and then they make a determination which then goes through the Commonwealth.
That's interesting. And the other one is November the 28th, Mr. Mayor, introductory meeting with the new cross-border commissioner, South Australia, Tarlan Ben.
Yeah, so South Australia has appointed. We had one before, is this a new one?
There was one appointed, but then there was a gap.
Yeah, a cross-border commissioner, and most other states do have them now to, I suppose, manage cross-border issues. Now, it'd be fair to say that we don't border the border, so, but there could be issues. So it was a courtesy meet and greet. Kellyanne Staffen is the lady's name. And I think she's going to move to Mount Gambier to do this job. So, but, you know, COVID obviously showed up issues of the border, and particularly in this. So that was just a meet and greet. Councillor Arthur, you've got that look of question.
I think there's always been one at Mount Gambier because the water allocation plans work between Victoria and South Australia right up the whole full border. They don't use quite as much water as we do, apparently, but there's been a commissioner in charge of that for a long time.
Yeah, that would be separate. This is a general government one, and I think she's responsible to the Department of Premier, straight at the top departmental process. There's issues of education in particular and health, I think, that biosecurity, there's several, so that this is just a management process of government that's been shown to work, and particularly between Queensland and New South Wales, I think, what's happened there. Councillor, Councillor Roundtree, you'll go, because you've been pointing a lot.
Oh, no, that counts.
Peach, Councillor Peach.
Sorry, it was just for context on this. The cross-border commissioner has existed for a long time between New South Wales and Victoria due to the water towns on the river. A friend of mine was the deputy there. And it became painfully apparent through COVID that they had a solution in place. Their team went from 2 to 8, and South Australia had quite a deficit there.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's a positive and it's positive she dropped in and seen us, to be quite honest.
What sort of power does this commissioner have?
None in a statutory sense, I don't think.
Recommendation.
They're just a recommendation to Department of Premier and Cabinet. So that's probably the more important part. She sits in that zone of advising, I suppose. Other questions around my report, councillors? Yes, councillor Roundtree.
13th, your CFS group meeting at Canalpin. Was there anything that came out of your CFS meeting?
Not that hits me. Is there anything you're concerned about?
No, I just wondered, was there anything discussed on issues in the region about stuff that they want to get done? Anything identified as being problematic that needed to be resolved? I know one of the issues that had come up was access to water and finding out where water could come from and identifying what was needed to hook fire trucks up to the different, because we've been approached to provide water, but I just wondered whether that had been raised.
It's been raised in a general sense. As you know, it's our highest priority in our listing of potential looking for grants, but there's no particular funding stream around that. I sense that CFS hierarchy aren't particularly emboldened by that idea either. Our CFS group, as in everything but Tail and Bend, the Coorong group's now got a bigger water tanker based at Kaikai at the moment. I don't sense any movement on that unless the appropriate grant process comes up. Have we got, and I'm looking at Councillor Arthur now perhaps, or Councillor Peach, at the Tintinara airfield we've got reasonable water supplies, I presume, because they load the planes there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and the schools have got, Duke's got one, I don't know, at Tintinara, they got firefighting loading tanks there in front of the property. At Tintinara, have you got firefighting tanks?
At the airport, yeah.
No, but also at the school. Kermadookas are on the highway if anyone got access to.
I don't think there is.
Well, they've got a big tank there, yeah, so they've got a bore any rate.
Yeah, at a bore anyway. But your point, councillor, is around use of good farm facilities like your own. It's really an issue that's probably got to be pushed up through the farm firefighting unit sort of process, I think. I think that'll be the far more useful way of doing it. But the group didn't say yes or no. Sorry.
Well, we're happy to obviously be involved in that. We just need to know what fittings we use. And I just wonder whether at the Canalpin meeting, did any of that say, was that ever discussed to find out what fittings? We'll even buy them.
Yeah, but
There's nothing worse than having a truck turn up and we can't fill it.
Well, the current standards fittings on CFS units, 10 years now?
Storz.
STORZ. The old style fittings, the big broad threads, were called London, but the Storz are probably the standard, and there's a lot of adapters on fire trucks.
Okay.
I've got a bit of a question back to Councillor Peach. Do you aware that we're still looking, because you're involved in the skidder training, that Kyle's been looking for more volunteers to go for that training?
No, I wasn't. So I'll need to follow that up.
Oh, yeah, now.
Rightio.
There's been the skidder is a machine that's been housed and designed and pushed by Tatiara Group and it's based at Keith, which is based on a logging skidder, but it's a way of clearing an earth break in sandy country in effect with minimal environmental impact. And Councillor Peach, I think you've been trained or are going to be in that in a group from our group, but it is in the next region, which makes it complex.
It's a fire break machine, is it?
Yeah,
There's two of them?
It's a double way grader really, but it's very robust.
One drags one drags a set of offset discs and the other drags an A-frame that creates a passable track in one go.
Very large A-frame compared to the later in this agenda.
And I have bent it.
Yeah, but
Okay, I'm still in
Let's do that
questions in my report, councillors. Thank you for Remembrance Day, councillors. We got all that done properly. I've been involved. I'm effectively LGA's rep on the Drought Reference Committee. And yesterday there was a meeting with the financiers, which I did watch online. Karen McLeod, our regional executive officer, is also been invited to be in attendance, and we'll have a report to the LGA around that. State government has announced a package. Not a lot to be quite blunt at the end of the day. So, but the reality of the small harvest is about to hit us as we finish right now. So, yes. NBN. I was happy to be here with a visit from the Mr. NBN, and some parts of our town, I'm looking at Councillor O'Hara now, will be upgraded and some won't. And we can understand the logic of that, as in fibre to the premise, I think.
Premise.
The premise. I think even your house councillor might be on that list.
Good.
Yeah. By IT ability, I know. But not all, and there's probably no logic in it.
You can check
Yeah,
online.
you can check online. Anyway, so they're still trying. And there's a new wireless transmitter, Halen Bend, is that right? I think it was,
Just
yeah.
outside, yep.
Which has significantly increased the wireless NBN process, not the satellite, the wireless one. So, and urge people to look online for the maps to see where the upgrades have happened. There's no other questions. Councillor Maidman, you want to add anything to your report?
It's pretty self-explanatory, but if I may, Mayor, through you, excuse me, the Coorong Investment Prospectus launch was a really good day, so congratulations again to Miles. That was very well put together, and hopefully things come from that. Also, the 25th of October, the Power of Her event with Minister Hildyard, I think is how
Hildyard.
you say it, yep. And going on from your comments in the previous meeting, was very female orientated, but it needed to be. It didn't have to have a lot of males there.
Two of us,
Yeah, I know. Well, they weren't really needed, were they, to be
The
honest?
men.
No. Anyway, we won't go into that debate. I thought that was very interesting. It's very intricate, if I could say that, with what is going to come out of that. Lots of different portholes, for want of a better description. So, yeah, I found that very interesting and had a very good chat to quite a few of the presenters afterwards, and they were very determined, put it that way, in getting their things across. So that's great.
So they had this is the year before they had one in Adelaide, this function. We're the first region to have this style of function. Minister's very much behind it, and we as mayors had an hour with the minister a bit later in the day. Come back, so it was very good. Yep. Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. Okay. Move to item 7, petitions. I have none. 8, I have no deputations, I understand. None. Number 9, public question time, unless staff are acting in the public question process. None, Ashley? None. Number 10.1, decision reports. Drought considerations 24/5, capital program reduction considerations. And councillors, you'd be aware that this sort of decision process leads on to the next agenda item. I think it's the next one. Is there questions first? I'm going to take questions first on this one, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to first of all ask the added 400,000 required for projected rates shortage. Is that the rates we're going to get in? Or is that the rate for jobs that we've allocated to be done?
That is a provision for what the best guess of the organisation right today can give of people who won't be in a position to pay their rates in the last 2 quarters of 24/5. That's a provisional.
Yeah, and the other.
As you'd know, the rates will still eventually be paid by whatever method. And that comes into the discussion further
It's
down
just
the
that we've
line.
been talking about what the rates are for unsealed road, what the rates are
No.
for sealed roads with existing projects.
No, this is around just straight dollars in this business. It's not to do with
Okay.
the costings of any projects.
And the other one is in statement 2, in
Scenario.
scenario two, the deferring of additional light vehicle utes and buildings in structure projects for a further year presents a higher risk to council. Why would it be a higher risk? Because, you know, for example, Canalpin Depot's, but they haven't talked about doing anything there till now. Tintinara Town Hall's been on the list for about 6.5, 7 years. So it's not as if they, you know, have to do things. And, you know, four brand new utes running around, I don't think it gives a good look to the council.
No. So as you would remember from the workshop recently, the motor vehicles is a little bit attached to a further report in the agenda around utes and A-frames, partially. The second part is the motor vehicles process has been tied up in, as you know, in the contract for, when we used to have with Peter Hood Holden, all utes were brought back in 2017. So that's now, what, 7 years old. So I acknowledge what you're saying. The two trucks are not as problematic about deferral given to their use. Canalpin Depot has been reported to council as this stage. You've got some costing issues which have still been worked through. And the Tintinara Town Hall is, I don't think, what is the separate figure for Tintinara Town Hall? Does anyone know that?
I don't think we've got that yet.
I don't think we've quite got that yet. That's probably the one that's perhaps, if I was to put a view, least likely to be taken off the list. It's been around for about 6-8 years, and I think we've decided on what we want to do there, but it's subject to costings. It's simply a way of deferring. Take that on board. We would be deferring, but it also makes sure we've got appropriate cash in the business. Councillor Roundtree.
So would it be, is it possible to put the light vehicles in option one, or you're saying that those utes are required for the issue coming later?
Some of them are, but I know what the councillors are saying about motor vehicles, that the point would be they're more likely to incur higher ongoing costs due to their use up till now than the trucks.
Could we put two across and leave two?
Well, it's up to councillors perhaps in a minute, but there is, you know, it's your motion in a minute. I just simply point out that was discussed at the workshop, what could be deferred.
I think even.
And the Canalpin Depot is probably one which is a bit in the air at the moment, given we're halfway through the year. It's probably likely to be made hard to be affected by 30 June anyway.
I'd almost like to see the Canalpin Depot and the Tintinara Town Hall split anyway, because I think we need to go ahead with the Tintinara Town Hall, and perhaps we don't need to go ahead with the Canalpin Depot.
We got a bit of a feel what the budget line split of those two was, and what you can work out the utes at 55,000 a ute by the look of that, pretty straightforward. It is your motion, councillors. It is effectively a deferral, but it's to take account of that. You know, we're going to run into not a cash shortfall, because this is what this is trying to deal with, but we feel that we need to be ready for third and fourth quarter. You know, people not being in a position to pay their rates, and that's why there's a provision in this agenda item around that.
So through you, Mayor, I'd like to see enough utes, the utes that need to have A-frames fitted to solve the roller issue should stay in, because that's actually something that's going to benefit the community. So I don't know how many of those 4 utes are part of that.
In the report, I think you'd probably need to allow for at least 1, if not 2 new utes.
2 new utes. So maybe we could look at putting not having 2 new utes, taking off the Canalpin Depot and sticking with the removal of the plant and the heavy vehicle items from plant and fleet. So maybe those 3 things could be.
Just getting the advice from the
Option one.
CEO is getting the advice from the officer. Is that?
I was just checking with the Tintinara toilets. The budget allocation is 110,000, and that includes the kitchen and the toilets. Based on the quotes that we've got for the Canalpin Depot, we're probably fairly confident that the quotes will come in over that amount, and 110,000, I suspect, will probably only do one of the projects at Tintinara, either the toilets or the kitchen. I can't see it stretching to both in the current environment.
Well, I might point out, Mr Mayor, the Canalpin Depot details construction budget, they've got 165,000. Split up actually works out to 175,000.
So
20, 35, 10 and 10.
Okay, I've got Councillor O'Hara's had his hand up for a long time.
I just think that utes should be left in there. They're used every day. And they're 7 years old and they've done 180 odd thousand. So they're using 30,000 Ks a year. The trucks, they don't get used every day, but I mean, I understand people saying if there's 4 new utes running around, but they also be bitching if there's
There's 4 old utes.
4 utes broken down on the side of the road, oh, why don't you get new ones? I think the utes should stay in there.
Okay. I'm looking around for a general feel of the room. I've got utes or half utes. Is there anyone in particular would be worried if we continued on the process of looking at the best options for the Canalpin depot, but it be taken out of the spending in the next 6 months?
I'd be voting to take it out of the spending in the next 6 months.
We need to continue to look at options there. I think it's.
Yeah.
But we still keep the process, but I've got 2 utes, 4 utes, councillors.
I did read briefly the email sent out by the CEO this morning around the Canalpin depot prior to the meeting. And I think the point you just made about looking at options is probably where I was going to go with that, particularly prefabricated options versus full kit out on site. So I'm more than happy to see that deferred and continue to look at options.
You were 2 or 4 ute man.
I was a 2 ute man until Councillor O'Hara spoke, and now I'm probably leaning to 4.
Right. I'm going around the room looking at views before you form a motion.
I'm a 2.
2, we've got 3, 4, 2.
I got 4, 4, 2.
Well, we wasn't quite convinced. Councillor Maidman, how many utes?
Through you, Mayor, I'm probably going to be the big foo-bar here, and I actually don't like this scenario at all, as the recommendation says.
Eat either of them?
Well, the recommendation that the motion says the 2.1 cash advance debenture, removal of heavy vehicle plant and fleet. When we had the workshop, my understanding was that was scenario 1, which I think it still is. I actually think scenario 2 is better, and that's not what we're voting on. So I'm not voting for this.
No, we're not voting on anything yet because we've got no motion.
No, but I'm saying if this is the recommendation that we go for.
You'd be more in favour of scenario 2.
Yes.
Telling me, I think.
Yep.
Right. You haven't given
As it is.
How many utes? It's a bit of a duck shop
Well,
utes here, but
this is the thing. I mean, we haven't really come to a decision. And probably 2 to make it easier for
I'll get you to the motion. Yep. No, I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor. Councillor Arthur.
Well, first of all, I would say the Canalpin depot and the Tinty Hall probably wouldn't be done in this year anyway. By the time we go through all January in a few weeks.
Tinty Hall's got a better
We've
chance.
still got to go through all the rigmarole and.
Looking at the CapEx man back here, Tinty Hall's pretty progressed as a process, isn't it?
So it's,
Probably as consider it as progressed as Canalpin.
Oh.
Depot stage.
Yeah. You're not on a mic, so I'm just.
Better hold them off the list.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's and Utes, councillor. I'm on the Utes.
well, the thing is, you've tried to get a tradesman lately,
Luckily,
a builder or anything like that?
yes, I have,
Yeah.
and yeah, fascinating process. Sorry, just talk about the capital projects in buildings at Canalpin Tinanara, please, Josh.
All right, so I'll talk to the Canalpin depot first. So we've formally closed out the tender and not going to accept any submissions because of the inability to meet the budget that we have set. Following on from that, and in the background, I am sort of trying to determine what's the best localised option that'll present value for money, that will see the project delivered to our intended budget. And at this stage, it's looking like something prefabbed, delivered to site and then put together by a local builder. Now, the structure is probably the least expensive part of it. It's the fit out that ends up costing a lot by the time you gyprock floor, tiles, bathroom fit out, the DDA requirements, kitchen. So I think we can do something to budget, but there's still some work to do there. In terms of the Tintinara Town Hall, we've got some plans there. The challenge with that is that In terms of the toilet, if we build the toilet facility, modern day requirements of the premises, so we've got to consider the total amount of square areas that determines maximum patron usage. And based on that patron usage number, we're required to have a set amount of toilet facilities. And at the moment, we probably can't achieve that within the current footprint of the toilets that are there. So, you know, there's a bit to consider there, whether we start shifting external walls to give us the provision that we need, or do we just fit out what we can within the walls that are there? And, you know, essentially, it'll just be a newer version of what's there, not increase capacity as such.
What I'm probably saying, Joel, is those projects may struggle to get done this year anyway, this financial year.
I'd suggest they probably would, given where we're at, and you know, we're still, you know, especially with the town, like with the depot, I'm pretty comfortable that we've got something we can get built. With the town hall, there's still a bit there to deliberate there, as in terms of from a building compliance perspective, should be building versus what we could build. Still a bit there to identify.
What I'm insinuating is if it's finished in April this year, next year, or July, August, it's not going to make a big difference, but it's going to make a difference to our cash flow and our budget.
Correct.
Sorry, councillor O'Hara.
I've got no idea. Why don't we scrap the Canalpin building,
Mhm.
give the boys a new ute and let them work out a winning together. Focus a lot, isn't it?
Just taking that as said, councillor, I'm working my way around the room. But I'm going to look at councillor Qualman and see how many youths and what his preferences are.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I'll be the real odd one. I don't like either of them. The reason I don't like either of them because it involves more debt. However, I do congratulate the appropriate staff who have gone through and worked out how we can delay plant and fleet renewal and also various projects. And we'd only be reluctantly that we go down on the CAD facility application rather than a loan application to make up to keep the cash going. I'm always a bit dubious about getting more cash, but I understand we're going to have a shortfall. So that's why what I'm hearing around the room, I'll support and we'll go with scenario one in some form or whatever.
Sorry, councillors, this is not to cover a shortfall. Well, I could be really clear about this, and the next agenda item deals with the actual borrowing from memory. This is to make a budget change out of this motion, out of the current circumstance. I'll be more blunt, and to give some guidance to the next motion. Really get that clear. I think councillors are moving towards, if I could be really help you with a motion, to 2 utes, remove trucks, probably halve the budget on budgets, and a 1.5 borrowing. Is that where the room's somewhat at?
Did you say you remove the Canalpin?
No, I can't move anything.
No, I said.
I would be removing half of
asking
the
you what you
budget for
said.
the 2 buildings.
Right.
I think that gives some room between the 2 options that the managers put to you. Now, I'd be wary in the midterm of us continuing to defer buildings. I know they're a lot harder to arrange, but we need to continue to make a budget allocation. If it's start in June, well, we start in June. I mean, that's just how life is, but Councillor Arthur's quite right. Getting any tradesman any day is challenging. But that's my thoughts, but I can't lead the meeting too much. I'm looking for you to, as a group, put together my summation, which is more in number 2 than 1, believe it or not. Councillor Peach.
I'm happy to try for a motion.
Yep, well, I'm ready for it. If everyone else is.
Remove the heavy vehicles, remove 1 light vehicle. So we progress with 3 utes and defer the Canalpin depot to the following year acknowledging what councillor Arthur said, that Tintinara may not fall within this year, but the Kenelpin Depot is the larger of the $2 amounts.
Which of the, just in the 290 in the buildings, is Kenelpin Depot's value at the moment in budget?
Through the mayor, it's 180
180, so you'd
Yeah.
remove 180 for the time being?
per budget. Sorry, the reason for 165 per the email is because we take off the on-cost on the annual business plan budget amount to leave us with the construction amount, but per the budget, it's 180.
So you're removing 235 so far, councillors? No, 235 plus 500. 735, how's my arithmetic going, Bill? Never do it on the run, councillor Rountree. And so, sorry, I'll just finish because I don't know if councillor Peters moving the motion yet quite.
I'm happy to put that forward, but I'll just put that up as a proposal and see where we go from there.
Just get it clear what you're putting so that
That's correct.
before I formalise you.
Yeah. But what's on the screen is correct.
And you're happy. So this is more in like a scenario 2A or something. Can we name it?
I don't think we have to.
Don't
name
have
it.
to. What's your motion at the end of the day? That's right. And
Mr Mayor, I would.
not
second it.
supporting anything yet until I get a seconder, I can guarantee you. Just wait, I'm just waiting for the screen to catch up to what we intend.
Sorry.
No, I think that's where I was at, the proposal.
And so you then would add the 400,000 projected rate shortage still in.
Yes, acknowledging that within the
Acknowledging that.
motion,
And so
yeah.
where would your net position be?
Just trying to do the math in my head. It's about 1.7, 1.8
It doesn't have to come
line
into.
allocation.
So councillors, in a strange way, that while it's there for information in this, that is in the next agenda item, that.
Yeah. But
So-
stay with me. 735 less 400 would be net 335. So reduction of 335, so that would make borrowings 1.765.
I've got my finance manager sitting there shaking his head a little bit. So I think we'll deal with the first motion, not talking about where the borrowing sits at,
Yes.
because I think that's the simplest way of dealing. Removal of heavy vehicle plant, as in trucks, removal of one ute, one of the four at 55, and deferring of the depot at Kenelpin's costs.
You put in a dot point saying acknowledging that.
Yeah, you could put
You've got to
point
tie them
four,
together.
you could put point four acknowledging the potential 400,000 required for projected rate shortage, councillor, in that motion, if you'd like.
I would support that if we put the Tintinara Hall be deferred into.
All right, well, we'll get to a vote in a second, don't worry. Bill, could you want to give some advice on where we're at here? And I think I know where you're going to come from, but anyway, trial me.
I think, yeah, through you, Mayor. I think I just want to add to this. I would probably consider another path of not taking a net position on reductions. The reason being is, like, if items are deferred by a matter of months, it's not going to be significant if you have a cash advance. The cash advance is just going to sit there waiting for these deferred items. Like 2 months isn't going to materially change anything. I would suggest, if this is the case, whatever you choose to remove is what it is, or what the motion is sort of passed and agreed on. But I would suggest that the 2.1 still remains there, because in a matter of months, it straddles over to the 25-26 year, and the capital manager has construction ready to go early in the new year. You'd be back into another position where you increase the CAD next year, and the net position will be the same. There wouldn't be technically any impact to the CAD if you don't draw that 180 down. It'll just be sitting there waiting for to straddle the next year.
Mr Mayor, if I may.
So, hang on, stop. So, Bill, I think what you're saying is in relation to the next agenda item, interestingly enough.
Yeah, I'm sort of foreshadowing what will happen next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the potential mover, councillor Peach.
So, Mr Mayor, that's why I actually put this forward in that pathway and didn't take out the Tintinara Hall. Because I think councillor Arthur's right, it probably won't happen in this financial year, but acknowledging that it would still have the financial impact very shortly thereafter. I'm quite comfortable for Kenelpin Depot to push out further than that, which is why I think it could come off this. And the same with that vehicle, the light vehicle. So that was why I didn't suggest in my motion that we reduce buildings and structural renewal by the entire amount, but by the one, factoring in that I think councillor Arthur's correct, we probably won't have it done within this financial year. Be nice if we did, but I don't think we will. But that impact on borrowing, I think that is what I'm proposing in that would have an impact on the borrowing.
Borrowing process is probably the next agenda item. You're moving that way, are you? Now,
I'll move that way.
as it reads on the screen, councillors. Councillor Roundtree, you want to second it or you want to speak?
I want to second it. I just wanted to clarify, just in case with the CAD, if we just consider it as an overdraft. And that was, I'm glad Bill spoke about that, because that was where my head was thinking too, that there's actually no point going back and having to do this CAD process again later. We might as well just, if we're only paying interest on what we draw down, if like a normal overdraft facility. So if it sits there and we don't use it to the following year. So yeah, pretty much everyone started saying everything I was going to say, but I'm happy to second it.
It is the next agenda item and we've deliberately split it. So the things, councillor, so you've seconded it, seem to have spoken to it. Councillor Arthur, we're now in debate.
Yeah, look, I sort of agree with that. The thing we need to keep in mind that we're talking about a shortfall of 400,000. We're not saying we're going to write that off.
No.
400,000 is still going to come in at some time.
Through you, Mayor, it just could dribble in over 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah.
We're making this provision prudentially, or we may make this provision prudentially, and you notice there's an agenda item around hardship later today as well. Right, you speak, I'm taking you speaking in favour of the motion. I'm looking at other councillors. I've got Councillor Arthur.
I'll move as is, except.
No, that's already moved as it stands there.
No, except that we add the Tintinara Hall.
So you want to move an amendment?
Yeah, amendment, that's what I said, yeah.
Your amendment is that you want to change it to reduce the building and structures projects line to Tintinara Hall. So you want to change the figure to 290,000, is that right? That's what you'll do in effect.
Mr Mayor, can I suggest we do that by way of variation? And can I propose some wording around that?
I'm seeking the speaker, which is Councillor Arthur's. You want to vary the motion? You want to propose to vary it, or you want to have an amendment?
I think, like.
All right, so you're proposing, I need to.
It's not stopping the project being scoped, estimated and ready to build.
Councillor.
Not going to it'll take nearly 6 months to do.
Councillor Peach, are you prepared to vary it in some form?
Can I suggest we leave the word remove Kenelpin Depot and add postpone Tintinara Hall would that
change the figure to a total of 2?
You're virtually removing from this year's budget and they'll go in next year's.
Defer Tintinara Town Hall. Sorry, postpone. No, the not necessarily is why I'm not keen to have anything else except deferring for Tintinara Town Hall, because I want to see it progress. And I think that gives us, that's not taking it out of the budget, that's acknowledging the reality of what Councillor Arthur has suggested.
I'm looking at the governance officers and how they're going to word this, which is a variation, so that's in the mover's hand. Defer Tintinara Town Hall. Yep.
May I ask through your chair, is Councillor Arthur happy with that wording?
Well, you're the mover, so otherwise he can move an amendment if he has to.
I'm comfortable with that wording.
You're comfortable with that. Councillor Roundtree is the seconder. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Councillor Arthur, so it effectively defers and removes at this stage. I'm looking at who councillors haven't spoken. There's 2.
We can.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishes to, we're going to wind it up pretty quick now. Councillor Coleman, you're giving me that look, but I'm not quite sure what look it is. You don't need to speak. Councillor Peach will close.
So closed.
Councillors, the motion is, as it reads on the screen, to remove heavy vehicle renewal this year of 500,000. Remove one light vehicle from the plant and fleet renewals, which is 55,000, which leaves 3 utes in. And to reduce buildings and structures renewal projects, in other words, removing the council depot from this year and deferring Intonara Town Hall to a total sum for those two of 290, and acknowledging a projected 400K rate pool potential for 24-25. Runs clear?
Only thing through you, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, acknowledging possible objective for.
Yeah, it's just
Change it to possible.
possible, a possible. Yeah, thank you. Move and second, yeah. Wording, I know. Okay,
Can I suggest, councillor, potential is probably a better word? Is that all right?
Yeah.
No, take that one out.
okay, councillors. Motion is, as you see on the screen, all those in favour? As against, that's carried unanimously. Thank you for that consideration. Number 2, better stay there, Bill. Where's it gone? Now, this is the authority to, as per the budget process. Councillors, there's a recommendation, and you've heard our finance manager's view on it. Is there any sort of discussion around that, or is someone prepared to move that motion as it reads? Councillor Roundtree.
I'm prepared to move it as it reads.
Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Hara. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to your motion, please?
Taking on board what Bill has said previously, I think, and knowing what the effort is involved in actually applying for this sort of money, it makes little sense to reduce it by a small amount and then do it again later. So if we're only going to sensibly take what we need, then having that facility sit there, the 2.1 isn't a bad thing. And so we've already agreed that, we need to move this, go down this track. So I'm happy. I think it makes sense.
Okay. Councillor O'Hara, you wish to speak as a seconder? Thank you. Anyone else want to end the debate? Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Someone might be able to help define this. Net financial liabilities ratio adopted budget was 6.7%, and actual now will be 34%. Could someone define and give me some explanation how that works?
I'm going to look at the director or the manager or the CEO. Who wants to have a crack at
Through you,
that?
Mayor, I'll get Bill to just do it. The ratios in overall are a helpful tool for ensuring that the finances and things are on track. So there are bands or benchmarks within those ratios. And so part of good financial governance is to make sure we understand where our ratios sit. And if they're too high, what are we doing to get them lower? If they're too low, generally they're never too low. And there's 3 of them that we look at on a regular basis.
Through you, Mayor, I don't have those details in front of me. However, generally speaking, those percentages that are quoted, they're within a bandwidth. So at different points in time, they'll fluctuate. So the ABP was based on a snapshot in time. And if, for example, if you look at the ratios yesterday, they'll be much lower than today because we've got a $1.8 million payment coming out today. So that will swing in peaks and troughs, and those 2 percentages are an example of that.
Other questions? Speakers for or against? Being none, you'll close, Councillor Roundtree.
Closed.
Thank you. So the motion is as the recommendation in the agenda, councillors. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Hang on. All those in favour of the slow hand process going here. Those against? Motion's carried with councillors. Councillors Peach and Qualman voting against, which means councillors O'Hara, Roundtree, Maidment and Arthur have voted for it. Still carried. Thank you, councillors. Number 3. Drought conditions, review of hardship provisions this is asking for us to recommend that we actually do review it urgently. That's in effect. Councillor Roundtree,
I'd move.
move it as reads.
Just asking for a report.
Yep. Councillor Qualman's the seconder. Are you in discussion, councillors Roundtree?
No, I think it's very self-explanatory. There's not much to go on yet. I gather the reason why we have to do this or put it through this process is because it's out of time to do the report or do the review.
Through you, Mayor, it's probably just good practice to flag that a policy that we have in place, we want to review for a special set of circumstances, which is the drought.
Councillor O'Hara.
Yeah, I'll vote in favour of this, but I think we should also have a look at whose rates are up to date now and whose aren't, because they could be claiming hardship when they haven't paid their rates for 5 years anyway. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that have a look at that. Last time I was on council, we always got that brought to us every quarter or so.
By category of rates, by the 9 categories. Like who was.
Yeah, by who hadn't paid their rates and
Yeah.
so forth. And I mean, otherwise we're going to have people claiming hardship here, just haven't paid their rates.
No, we won't do it.
No, but your point's taken, councillor, that we need to define it a bit more clear, not more clearly. I'm looking at the rates officer. It's probably a very clear provision. But this is, I suppose this is because the potential for outstanding rates sits with some of the larger ratepayers, perhaps in the next 6, 12 months. That's probably the real discussion we're having. And within local government circles, there's no consistent or standard hardship provision within councillors. And so we just need to sort of, because that's one of the issues the state government would say why they don't think they need to help local government, because we haven't got a standard provision. Okay. Who else wants to speak to that motion?
Look,
Councillor Arthur.
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with councillor O'Hara that it's got to be only the rate payments from now on. Quarterly payment that's not paid, they're the only ones that are eligible. Anything that's behind now is not eligible.
Yes, that's right.
And that's got to be made clear.
And you'd be aware that we've had probably some carry through from perhaps COVID under a similar sort of hardship policy. But that's Councillor Qualman.
Thank you. While we're talking about this, everybody, and I understand what councillor O'Hara and councillor Arthur are saying. However, the ones are behind, there's general ones that are already experiencing hardship.
Yeah, which can be picked up under the current policy anyway.
Yeah, that's right. So,
Yeah.
it's probably trying to weed out the you-know-whos and from the you-know-whats. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Any other further discussion? Being none, the motion is as reads the recommendation. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 4, budget review. Questions quickly. Councillor Peach, I'll start with you.
2 initial questions. The statement of comprehensive income indicates that the rate income was a better than adopted budget result. However, the statement of cash flows doesn't have the same figures around the rate receipts. So I just wondered if we could get some clarity on that, and also clarity on what blew out the depreciation cost by $1 million.
Through you, Mayor, I'll get Bill to make a comment.
Yep.
Just as an overall comment, this particular BR4 is a legislative requirement. All the financial statements that are referred to in it have already been adopted, audited and signed off on. It's I'll say a quirk of local government that there is a BR4, and I think it's there for any extenuating circumstances that come to light over the period of the final budgeting and closing of the books. Bill?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, councillor. So the first question, and generally speaking here, the cash flow generally does not agree to the income statement. Reason being is because some ratepayers don't pay. So when we generate rates, that's what the income statement captures, everything that we generate, not necessarily what people pay. the cash flow will show and display a figure that accommodates debtors, people that have not paid at that particular point in time. So that is the reason why you will see discrepancies in those figures. Not incorrect, it's just the nature of the statements. And to answer your second question, Councillor, depreciation has increased by $1 million. That was forecasted. That's on the back of several revaluations of our assets, and that was anticipated. It's captured in the long-term financial plan. At the point of when the ABP was originally produced, those figures were still being generated. So the ABP had a different set of figures. The LTFP captured the revaluations, and it's similar to the 23-24 depreciation figure.
More questions before I get a mover? Someone was prepared to move the recommendation, councillors? Councillors Rountree is the mover. Seconder? Councillor Maidment, thank you. Okay, councillors, any debate around this subject?
Just,
Councillor Arthur.
just one question.
Question.
In there, we've got in reimbursements, 130K favourable. 70 grand private works income. Did you see? What's that for? Private works? Who do we do the private works for?
So I'll take that on notice.
Just
We,
Joel
do
might be
that.
able to answer it if he comes to a speak.
I don't think we should mention people's names if that's what you're going to do. Sorry. As you know, if farmers in particular ask for something to be done, if there's capacity within the staff to do that, they do that, and then they charge the actual landowner. That's been a practice in this council for many, many years. We've probably diminished that facility over the last couple of years because generally we don't have enough redundancy or capacity to do the work that we have to do, but there is times when we will do private works.
Probably need to just take that bit more offline, councillor.
Because that's interesting, a comment, because we've had requests in the last few years for councils to grade, the inside road, but we've told them we don't do it anymore because of the fact it doesn't fit in with our schedule.
As a general rule, we don't anymore. But anyway, I think we just need to be a bit carefully. I'm not quite looking at the director and the officer, and there's okay. I've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any further debate? Being none. Number 4, it is as the recommendation reads, councillors. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 5. Surplus land strategy reinvestment option. Miles, do you want to just perhaps give a précis of how we've ended up here, please?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Now, I could have done this differently. I could have gone to the Audit and Risk Committee first and put us the recommendation that we gave with the cash reserve for surplus land sales and allocated growth strategy. But I'm actually quite glad I did it the way I did. Council expressed very clearly their support for a cash reserve. And then that was put to Audit and Risk, and Audit and Risk clearly did not support the concept of a cash reserve. I did put up an argument that in this case it was consistent with the equity reserve policy because it was based on exceptional circumstances. However, we do see quite a black and white approach nowadays to the idea of a cash-back reserve. So taking that on board and understanding that we have been very successful in terms of progress with audits, external audits, and with our relationship with the Audit and Risk Committee. And also considering that we're have just completed a review by SCOSA, I thought it's best to try to find some compromise. Now, effectively, the compromise of a register achieves the same ends. It's not overly complicated. Essentially, council still able to sell land, immediately put that revenue to bringing down its immediate debt. But at the same time then having a register whereby you record the amount of funds, net funds generated from that sale. And at the same time, you have recorded a motion from council that allocates a percentage of those funds to a specific capital project associated with growth. And that could be in the current financial year, it could be in the following year. But that provides the transparency that you would be seeking and external parties would be seeking. I would consider that as best practice, and I would consider that as a suitable compromise.
Councillors, you, audit and risk independent members were quite clear on this. Councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting against this motion. And I think the director has done a really good job of putting this together. And if this was a motion that had been presented to us without the past, without what has happened, I probably would have supported it. But Mr. Mayor, I think that audit and risk acted outside of their scope with the determination around this. This was a decision of the chamber. It was lawful. Their job is to review and evaluate the effectiveness of policies. Now, if they come back to us and said this doesn't fit within the Treasury Management Policy, you need to modify that in order to achieve this outcome, I think that would have been an appropriate response. But I think the Chair of Audit and Risk, in being as strong as they were in responding to this, has blurred the line a little. And I support the existing motion, which is still on the books, hasn't been rescinded, and think we should proceed down those lines. So I certainly won't be, I'm not opposed to this, but I do think that we shouldn't have ended up in this situation.
Okay. Councillor Quammen, do you want to add anything, since you're the one member that's in the chamber today? It's on audit and risk. I was in the room as an observer, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I take on what Councillor Peach is saying. However, yeah, it was unanimous, and I'm just a councillor dealing with people who are qualified. So yes, I am in a bit of dilemma. I can take on what Councillor Peach is saying, but I do support what our director's done in the paragraph that, and it reads that this prompted the staff to consider a workable compromise that would involve establishing a register to record net revenue, divide sales, and I think that's probably keeping the audit committee, risk committee happy, and maybe keeping council happy, and we're still defining or keeping record of money raised through land sales. However, probably get debatable or political when we go to split it up for various projects afterwards. But yes, I'm still having to think whether I'm going to vote yes or no. I'm in a predicament.
You're not voting anywhere yet because we haven't got a mover. But thank you. Could I just, this is I won't call it an elegant solution, Miles, but it is a solution to at least record land sales into a register, given that any sale of land, and this has happened, would just come off the general position or add to the general position of the council's finances. Councillor Roundtree?
If we were to go back to the original motion, which, as Councillor Peach says, is still on the books, where does that leave council if we don't agree with what audit and risk say? Like, I think Councillor Peach has made a very good point in the way this has happened. So if we decided that we would like to just do what we originally asked for in that motion, where does that leave us?
One of the things, through the chair, one of the things that hasn't occurred is, we talk about the Audit and Risk Committee, but we should talk about our external auditor. So this hasn't been put past our external auditors. So there's a potential when we're next audited, if it's passed that we have a cash reserve, that our auditor may find that not acceptable. And that's why I made the point that we have been very successful in removing any negative outcomes, negative findings from our audits over the last 2 to 3 years, to the point where we've only got a couple left now. Would love to be in a position where we have nil, and that is business as usual moving forward. But we can't say that. I haven't had time to be able to, or Bill or myself hasn't had time to have that conversation with our external auditors yet.
So through you, Mayor, is it your view that the auditor would look unfavourably on the original motion and what we wanted to achieve, as opposed to this one?
Oh,
So through the chair, they at least will look, I would think they would look unfavourable, yeah, I would think they look unfavourable about council not supporting the direction of the Audit and Risk Committee.
Bill, would you want to add to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Audit in the past few years, in terms of our reserves, such as one that's been proposed previously, their view has been that we reduce them, and they're not. You can go about getting the same result by establishing a register, like is suggested here. It's a recording in the statements, which you don't, in my view, in the chair's, Audit and Risk Chair's view, audit's view, from my interpretation and observation, that you can go about doing the same, getting the same outcome by just recording in a register. That's essentially what it's doing. It's whether you do it in the statements, which there'll be vision on by auditors. It's not the recommendation by the Audit and Risk Chair. It's not my recommendation. In my professional opinion, you don't need to, there's no point in doing this when you can create a register and do the same thing. It adds complexity to the statements. I've had conversations where they have asked myself and the finance team to start reviewing to remove reserves where they're not used or they're not necessary. It's just a recording. We don't shoebox funds. We manage holistically. So if there are funds from a land sale, it will go to reduce debt and as quick as possible, because that has the greatest impact. If you shoebox it, which wouldn't happen anyway, and put it aside, it has little impact till it's used. So for that reason as well, the reserves, reserves historically have been used, but they're fading out.
So can I just ask Bill, you're talking all reserves, because you've got the CWMS, you've got your water schemes, which is legislative.
Apart from,
you know, the Audit and Risk can't say you've got to get rid of them.
No,
That's
can't,
a
can they?
legislative requirement.
Bill?
yeah, through no, that's correct. Like, when I've been talking about this, I'm referring to other ancillary reserves, I would say, not the mandatory statutory reserves such as SWIMS.
There's spaces and that.
If open space is mandatory, then you would keep them as required, but there are other ones in our statements. There's stuff like Meals on Wheels, which has been there and it's minor, and they suggest to write it off. We've kept it in there, but it has a recording, but that's exactly what it is. It's a register when you can create one. It's a simple process if you create other statements. I don't see why you need it in there.
Well, there's been a lot of land sold the last 5 or 6 years, and that's just gone wherever. It's just gone within the system and revenue. The other thing is they recommended, and they were in favour of having a reserve scheme for the lap. So, you know, one they're saying yes, the other was saying no, but then council hasn't got around to setting that up.
Through you, Mayor, just with that, every reserve's different. So with the LAP reserve, my understanding is there's another council involved. So for transparent reasons, in our publicly available statements, that was one of the main reasons that it gets established and factored in. The reason you don't see it is because there's no residual funds to record. Once it's spent, there's nothing to record. If we're underspend, then we'll record it.
Okay, councillors, if any more questions, I'm looking for someone to move something. There is a recommendation there. Councillor Roundtree.
If we can still achieve what we want to achieve and not annoy the auditors or come under fire, then I'm happy to move this one, so long as we are confident we can achieve what that first motion set out to achieve.
Yes.
And I'm seeing lots of nodding, so
Well,
that's encouraging.
I'm taking you're moving the motion, as is
Yes.
the recommendation. I'm taking that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arthur is the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to your motion?
I very much support what Councillor Peach had said. I feel the information from the Audit and Risk Committee overstepped the mark, and perhaps it could have been done better. It's left us in a position where I think very cleverly, the director has come up with a good solution. It will achieve what we want to achieve. So long as the outcome is the outcome we wanted, I think this will still do it. I would have preferred the other, but let's go with this one.
Certainly. Councillor Arthur, you wish to speak as the seconder?
I'm going on here. This will be a separate entity. It's a revenue, land sales, so people can see
The
structurally
record.
what it is, and that's what we need to know. I've been on that for quite a few years, and
Yep.
the land has just disappeared.
Certainly, councillor.
Okay.
Okay. Right for debate, councillors. Anyone else? Councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to speak against. As I mentioned before we got to the actual motion, I think Audit and Risk has overstepped the bounds here. A strategic equity reserve for a specific purpose like this, it should have been their job to look at the process around it, not to tell us that we couldn't do it. It's something that's in place in other councils and it's lawful. It's the opinion of the Audit and Risk Chair that it shouldn't proceed. And I think, as I've said, that is overstepping the mark. I would suggest to my fellow councillors that if they do wish to progress this motion, that it should be varied to rescind the original motion. Otherwise, we have two competing motions on the books. But on principle, as I said before, I do congratulate the Director on achieving the outcome within this, but on principle, I'll be voting against.
The councillors, thank you, Councillor Peach. The advice would be that heed that motion. But it could be more overt in the future, and you could.
Mr Mayor, I would argue it doesn't supersede it. They're two different outcomes.
I would need more. Look, that was just advice on the run, so I would just put that. But at this stage, this doesn't stop this motion being voted on today. Yep. Anyone else wish to speak for and against? You'll close, councillor. So the motion is the recommendation in the report, councillors. Put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? It's carried. So councillors O'Hara, Roundtree, Maidman and Arthur voted for it, the motion. And councillors Peach and Qualman voted against it. Still carried. Thank you, councillors, for your consideration around that. Number 7. Menengi, which one have I gone to? Number 6, sorry, I have jumped. Number 6. Menengi Waterfront Motel permit application for car park on Council Road Reserve. I just want to add to this from a planning perspective, why this is required at this stage of consideration.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Essentially, the development cannot proceed without lawful car parking as you will know, a motel requires certain amount of car park. In this particular case, as we know with this site, there isn't adequate room on their land to hence the need for a permit to one, to create a car park on council land, and two, to use that car park for business purposes for 5 years, noting that 5 years is the maximum period. So that would have to be renewed every 5 years, and the applicant, and we're trying to make sure that this permit runs in parallel with the development application process. And it is, because the development application process look like it'll carry through into the new year and hopefully be ready for approval at the same time this permit's ready for approval.
Councillor O'Hara, you're moving the recommendation in its totality, the 2 points. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Maidment. You're the seconder now.
I
I've
do have a
decided.
question, but I'm happy to second it.
Righto, I'll let you have your question then.
Okay, it's just a grammatical question again in recommendation 1. It states for, continuing for private car parking to be installed at the cost, it says, of the developer. Should it be to the developer? Hence, at the cost to the developer, of the developer.
I'm happy to
If
change
that makes you happy,
That
councillor.
makes me happier. Just made it clearer. Thank you. Me being me.
That's all right. Okay. This is open for debate, councillors. Councillor O'Hara, do you want to speak to it as a mover?
I'd just say that I think it's terrific,
Hmm.
what they're doing, and, everyone parks in that position
In any
now
way.
anyway.
That's right.
It's used for a car park now, so why not busy it up a bit?
Formalise it there. I think you're right, councillor. It's a wider area than it may first appear on a map. Anyone else, councillors? No more. You're closed, councillor. You've done it that quick. Taking that as closed. Motion is the recommendation, councillors. All those in favour?
Seconder hasn't been put
We're
up.
doing that.
Very
Yeah,
good.
it has-
You're very grammatical, councillor.
Not
Those
good
in
enough.
nonetheless, those in favour.
This document.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's carried unanimously. Councillors, thank you. Number 7, Menengi dry area, hotels dry area exemption.
Moves that way.
You move that way. Councillors Arthur, is there a seconder? Councillor O'Hara. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward. Councillor Qualmer. Ooh.
Yeah, yes, it's not quite straightforward, or unless I'm reading my Google Maps wrong. They got Macintosh Road showed as Albert Road.
Is
Is in that part of the town it is.
Albert Road, thank you very much. That's all I wanted to know.
It's an old Menengiite, councillor.
Yes, I did ring a bell.
To what point is it? To East Terrace, is it?
think so, yeah.
I think that's about right,
Then
yeah.
it becomes Macintosh.
Macintosh Way at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Nonetheless, anyone else got any questions around it?
Closed.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 8. Possible nomination of a representative for consideration by the LGA for the Native Vegetation Council's option 1, or just we receive and note the report. Someone got a view?
I'm probably leaning more towards option 2.
Councillor
Agreed.
Maidment, it was you had your
Agreed.
hand up first. You're 2. So
Yep.
number 2, Councillor Maidment, and are you going to second that, Councillor Roundtree?
Yes, I will.
We had some of us attended a workshop with the Native Vegetation Board a couple, 3 months ago at Murray Bridge. I don't know if that was informative, but we did.
It was on a new board then too.
That's right. Well, this is for the local government to consider. So, yeah. Okay. The motion is option 2. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 9. Okay. Lake Indawara Water Quality Monitoring Procedure. Is a recommendation. Did Councillor Peach, you want to question, to speak, to move?
No, Mr Mayor, I would like to move it with 2 variations, please. And I do thank staff for the work on this, and I'm pleased to say that it does address many of the concerns from last year. Happy to move the motion as read with two variations, and that is the removal of, from within the monitoring procedure of NATA accredited sampling analysis and research, those words. The NATA accreditation is to laboratory specific and not to a consultant. So I would like that to read, water quality sampling should be undertaken by a suitably qualified engineering/environmental science consultant, and just remove those other words from that. And the second variation I would like to see, second point I'd like to have is under the amber level. Currently the action required is for CDC to install signage that say lake unsuitable for primary contact activities. I'd like that to read the lake may be unsuitable for primary contact activities, noting that the testing is an indicator, not an actual read. And I think noted in the report, on it should enable people to look at that and make a decision around that. So those are the 2 points I'd like to add.
I'm going to, there's 2 points. The first one around the NATA, is that a problem?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Fine. So this is.
So it doesn't change the intent of that. It just says that it will be a
it's just not
suitably
part of the motion
qualified.
either, Councillor, I'm just as long as we understand each other.
Mhm.
Second one, sorry, I'll try me again.
So the second one is under the action required from an amber alert for bacterial contamination fecal coliform, which is using the enterococci or E. coli measurement. The signage to read lake may be unsuitable for primary contact activities. So in the instance that we had a high enterococci reading for 1 week, it may actually not, it's an indicator mechanism, so it may not mean that there is a public health risk, but we are notifying people that it could be. They can go to the website, see the test results and proceed from there. I'd have no issue with the red level, meaning that we put lake closed signs up. I think that's sufficient. But again, the national guidelines state that you need to investigate what's causing it, and we're getting there. We're not quite there yet. So I think providing a warning, absolutely in line with what we should be doing, but we're making a judgment call based off a test that may not actually be definitive.
Okay. So they are variances in the report.
They are variances within
And
the
they will
procedure.
Fall within point 2, I presume.
Yes, they're variances, point 2 within the procedure. The report is good.
Yep, those 2 are, I'm told, are fine. They won't affect the process in any further form. And you're moving that way.
I am, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Roundtree. Councillor Peach, do you want to speak to that now?
No, beyond what I've already said, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd thank the Director for engaging on this process. I think this may achieve an outcome through this summer swimming season that is more beneficial to the community than that which we saw last year. And noting that this is for this year and that we can look at further developments and options into the future. I do have one question from the report. The report says there are still several strategic objectives that council admin wish to achieve at the Lake Indawarra precinct, and this worked on separately. I would like those strategic objectives to be identified to council members now, not in due course. So
First to the lease arrangements that are still being.
that's just around the lease arrangements.
Pretty much so,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay.
Through the chair, in the original management plan, there was the water quality monitoring aspect to it, and then there was like the master planning or the precinct planning work, and there was some operational things like putting the pontoons in, making sure that the signage was appropriate, and then there was those strategic ones around the leasing, the RV park and that sort of thing. So I think that's something that we can bring back to council at a later stage.
Thank you.
There is a seconder. No, I've got a seconder. Is anyone else? Councillor Arthur, you want to speak for or against? Got a question? No, Councillor Roundtree's already seconded it.
Oh,
Sorry.
is it? Sorry.
Yeah, I just, are we getting the same people to do it?
At this stage, we had through the chair, we had we'd already lined up, the same company for this swimming season. So we'll go out to market next season, prior to commencing.
That's just that I did send through some details of who does it, and probably would be a lot
So through the
cheaper.
chair, at the end of the last season and the feedback we'd received from community and from elected members, we went back to the consultants and advising that these are our expectations and we wanted some assurances around that as part of scoping for this. But next year we can certainly go out to market.
Have they done any tests as yet?
I've
I've been swimming in it and I'm still alive, so.
We'll take that one on notice. I don't know.
I believe they have been.
That's what's
Marty
wrong.
actually, the officer that gets those results. But we have, yeah.
I think the main thing that we've got to emphasise, in the first lot of tests weren't done as a salt water. They've got to test the salinity of the water. That's the big thing.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? So with those couple variances in the procedure in point 2,
Sorry, just in terms of that, it's not a referral, not a removal of reference to a NATA testing agency, where it refers to NATA testing laboratory, that's correct. It's referring in the final paragraph of the procedure to a NATA accredited consultant. So removal from the words NATA to the word research.
Oh,
So it still will say suitably qualified engineering/environmental science consultant.
I'm not sure. I think we're going to have a look at that one. Sorry, Mayor, through you. I think we'll just have, I'm not sure we can just use anybody who's qualified it. I think,
It says suitably, so that's up to the
Yeah.
administration to make the judgment. I'm saying that there is no such thing as a NATA accredited consultant. So
okay, yep.
Yeah.
I think that's okay because suitably qualified, we can refer back to the guide.
Okay, fair enough.
yeah, and that's where I was trying to get to. Yep.
are we going, Ash?
Yep.
So Ash, just take it. So if we go back to the word research, so it's just removal from NATA to the word research.
I don't think we even need that. You probably just need suitably qualified.
So we'll now read suitably qualified in research engineering environmental science consultant.
To you, Mayor. I'm not sure what research adds to it. It's just a suitably qualified.
Sorry, research was out.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Second one is correct. In relation to an Amber Alert.
Dot, in relation, yep.
Okay, everyone clear? Closed, councillor, I'm taking now.
Yes, Ms Mayor, I do still have a slight concern around the red level just being immediate at that level of monitoring, but very happy overall, so I'm going to let that one go through.
Okay, motion with those little variances, which you can see on the screen, councillors. I'm going to put the motion to you. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 10. Patrol grader towing, not the patrol grader, but a ute behind it. Solution, councillors, there's quite an extensive report. I understand that it's at variance to what we may have been told previously, that we probably could not economically have an A-frame towing a ute. It now appears we can with certain utes. Does anyone need any further explanation around that? Councillor Peach.
I just have a question regarding this, Mr Mayor, and it's very appreciative of the report. the approximate cost for the trailers being between 50 and 60,000, is that on a quoted basis? Or I just wonder where that estimation came from, having quoted up similar style trailers recently?
Gosh, yeah.
Through the chair, so on Department of Transport's website, they gave us a list of bodybuilders that can do things like the A-frame in particular. And so it was through those inquiries that we said, oh, well, we're looking at this option for A-frames. Oh, and if we can't do that, what's a ballpark price for a trailer option where we could tow the trailer? It would also, the intention would be that it would include toolboxes, fuel storage, those couple other things. But it is a high price, and I'd like to think if we actually went scoped up correctly and spec'd, and we might get a more competitive price. But that was just back of the napkin kind of in the discussions we were having with a couple of fabricators.
You scared me too, councillor, don't worry, but probably by the time you have the weight of the trailer on the vehicle, it gets to a different weight category. I think it's probably the.
Sorry, having been involved in something a bit similar to this recently, I think there may be potential for that to be almost halved. So it would be, I'd just be interested, I think the A-frame is the obvious choice here. But I'd just be interested if we're looking at that 15 to say 20-year lifespan, whether the trailer at a reduced rate might be effective.
For the price of the A-frames, which we now understand are possible, it's probably the best path still. These are the trailer, which is another item I understand. Yeah. Other questions around this process? And councillors, you'd note that this is around utes and not around rollers. Rollers will follow up further in a further report, but it appears we can't put the two together anyway. So that sort of half solves that problem.
So my question, this isn't my area of expertise, but weren't we told a while ago that we couldn't have these A-frames and now we can?
Well,
So
that's right.
how does that work?
I'd like to give some credit to the department and the officers involved in pursuing this relentlessly.
The A-frames, the ones that we're proposing, are attached on eyelets and are removed. So you can't have a
Fixed
A-frame that you.
Through the chassis.
Pop up in front screen and be bolted onto the bull bar. They're illegal now because they've said there's sight distance and vision impairment issues. So the A-frame that we're proposing is got two eye bolts, and so the officers will remove them and put the A-frame back of the U.
Okay. Well, well done on getting to a sensible outcome.
And the report fully outlines where in the real outback you can have more trailers, but we are basically, particularly national highways.
Through Mr.
Councillor
Mayor,
Arthur.
questions there, Josh. Have we got quotes from any local engineering works for these?
Not as yet. We the quotes we got were from the pre-approved list that did have on their website in terms of that can provide those options. So should council seek administration to explore the A-frames in more detail, we'll certainly consider local fabricators if they conform to our requirements.
Well, I hope we do the locals. And I know we don't employ many locals, but we've got to try and keep the local businesses here. And speaking to a local in the area, he was amazed at the cost you're talking.
Yep.
And he's done heaps just in the last.
So, councillor, I understand exactly what you're saying.
And engineered.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
the level of what we require and what I might require as a farmer are probably a little bit different in terms of a compliance point of view.
through the chair, we'll develop a spec that meets all the requirements, the compliance, the WHS, and if there are local engineering companies that can do it, we'll send it to them for quoting as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Cormann, are you ready to move it, are you?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Oh, very good. All right, the report is as it reads.
Very good report.
I'll second it, definitely.
Councillor Arthur is the seconder, so you want to speak, Councillor Arthur, Cormann?
I just want to say it's a good report, and it explains the removal and the attachment of the A-frame, which we've seen to be some difficulty when we were discussing previously looks like it might be a bit of a goer, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else questions? Councillor Peach,
I may just make a comment,
comment?
Mr Mayor.
Turn into a question, yes.
Yes. Oh, no, it is a question. When developing this further, I just wondered if the director could potentially look at the options for noting that the report talks about Hayman Reese on the back of the graders. Now you and I would be familiar with them for attaching fuel bins. There's some remote attachment options that go into a Hayman Reese that you can locate the vehicle within a metre, a couple of metres at the back of the vehicle, and it will pull it in and then pin it. Just wondered if that could be
Well, there could be that. It could be,
potentially looked at.
as I'm sure Councillor O'Hara would understand, a ring feeder style. I understand that the graders probably have a camera on the back now anyway, which makes backing up a bit easier. But
So just in terms of that, getting within proximity and then being able to locate, might be worth looking at.
lucky I've still got fingers with some experience with one of those field bin ones. Okay, councillors, the motion is moved and seconded. It is as it reads in the agenda. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 11, EV charging station at Tintinara. Councillors, is any questions before we move to motion, please? It's Councillor Qualman.
Just a simple 1.2, we've got to find $20,000. That's no drama.
Well, I'm not. I wouldn't say it's no drama, but given the journey we've been on, councillors, I think it's a reasonable outcome.
Yes.
And what it does show is, and councillors Peach and Arthur were at the site visit, is that when you get everyone that's involved on site, you can usually come to a conclusion. Although I'm sure, Councillor Arthur, your compatriot now in South Australian Power Networks didn't agree with your technical assessments, I think, but yours might have been a couple of years older than his, I think. but
Now
yeah.
they've got a new problem to find a power
the
source.
Sounds to, yeah, that was,
Someone hooked up to their power that they don't know
don't
anything
know about. But I thought from a community point of view, and you would note that we don't feel, please, we don't feel we need to go back to a formal public consultation.
One question before we go any further on this. This is for 5 years. Now, all these stations, we've been giving them these 5-year leases. What happens after the 5th year?
Joel's about to give me the answer.
Thank you.
Speak to, through the mayor, just with this particular site, the proposed expiry with debt, and then we would.
But the others were, Canalpin was 5 years.
Yeah, so I'll just.
I'm just asking a question. After the 5 years that lease runs out, what's happened? All right, say walk away and say, right up, Canalpin down.
So.
Your problem.
No, I believe agreement, it states one of two options. They either renew the lease or the infrastructure gets removed.
Well, so we've never been able to find any actually specific wording on those. You know, that after the 5 years, you know, what's happening.
The 5 years is the maximum in the Act that we can push. That's the issue. I know what you're saying, councillor. I'd be very surprised that they won't.
For nothing.
Be very surprised that whoever the RAA is that day won't come to us asking for another 5 years.
The technology supersedes.
Or the technology supersedes it and we'll go back to petrol. I don't. Miles.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, to some degree, even though that 5-year maximum is a bit frustrating, it does give you the opportunity maybe to actually renegotiate another 5-year term and taking note of what technology looks like in 5 years' time. So maybe this the motel, maybe in this case, it's a good thing.
And perhaps in the broader sense, to have 4 RAA charging stations in our 4 principal towns, plus some businesses already adopting it, as Dale and Bend here, puts us in a pretty good position if people wish to charge up electrically. Is there any other questions? Councillor Maidment.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, just with recommendation number 3, council funds the final shortfall amount necessary to support the completion of the EV charging station car park. What, there's no amount there. I think it's a little bit, do we put something there to clarify that a little bit? What happens if costs blow out and then because we're required to fund it, we may not be able to find the funds?
My interpretation, councillor, would be $20,053 is a limit.
That's the limit?
That would be my interpretation of this motion, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bob's got a comment.
Through the chair, we could put to a maximum of that.
That's
Quoted
what I was
amount there.
thinking, what the room feels of,
Yeah.
what that a maximum amount would be, but it just kind of, that leaves that very open that it could
Yep.
be 100,000. When we pass, say, potentially pass this, that will automatically fund it.
No, but it's simply an extension of the present turning circle in that area at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah,
It does lead us to the opportunity in the future for, as the streetscape plan for that area, to a different entrance in the future, though. One of the advantages of this process is it gives us a bit of leverage on that southern entrance.
so to continue on, what Ashley's put in there is fine, a maximum of
Yeah,
20.
so you're happy with that little
Just to
addition?
clarify that a little bit, I just don't want to see we get lumbered with a
If
bill.
you're that
that
happy,
we-
do you want to move the motion?
I'm happy to move the
Very
motion,
good.
and I've already spoken to it.
Or
So-
even better. You're a seconder. Councillor Roundtree's thinking about it. Councillor Coleman's going to be the seconder because he did not equivocate. You want to speak, Councillor Coleman?
Okay, and I just sort of asked that question, the 20 grand, and I concur with councillor Mayman, and we'll keep a lid on that. But I'm glad we've got a solution for what the community wanted. So the community were happy to have it there, the majority of them, and that's the beauty about community consultation. Even though it wasn't a preferred site for the RA, it still looks like it's going to happen. So that's why I'm glad and seconding the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. The representatives of the RAA were evangelical about their proposal to push for electric motor vehicles, I think it'd be fair to say, and as was Mr. Sappin, and it was quite an interesting discussion on site. I might just thank everyone involved, for the council officers and Ashley and the communication, and it was being pushed through pretty quick. Hindsight, I suppose if the other three sites we might do differently in the future, but as these things always come up in a different form and a different land tenure, that's quite challenging. Okay, I've got a mover and a seconder. Anyone else? None. You close, councillor.
Close.
Put the motion, the recommendation with that change in point 3 on the screen, councillors. All those in favour? Those against? Mick, you make it hard for me. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 12.
I'll move option 2, Mr Mayor. No change to be made. The current roadside fall into the policy.
So you're moving the recommendation as it reads, councillor Arthur? Yep. Receive the report and note the no changes at this stage.
I'll just talk on it straight away.
Yes, no, let's get a seconder. Is councillor Peach a seconder or not? Is that a yes,
It's a
councillor?
yes, but I will be speaking if I may.
Yeah, right. Councillor Arthur first.
When this policy was first brought in, one of the things you had to do is your roadside vegetation, which the council did not undertake at that time. So many, many years ago, it was in the budget for about 5 years and we never did anything about it. So this is the only way that council can actually control under the Native Vegetation Act. So, and that's why it's been kept like that. And if it went open slather where you didn't have to, well, we'd have to get the roadside done. I think the quote 7 years ago was about 50 grand by a mob called the Glenelg Trust at Narracourt. How much it'll be now, I don't know.
No, we don't want to know.
A bit more than that.
Yeah.
A bit more than that. Okay,
Thank you.
councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to second it as it reads. I think there are still some areas of scope within the policy that don't trigger the further financial burden that we could potentially look at, and I'll be looking to work on those into the future to streamline it more so for our residents. But having read the report and understanding financial implication to council on the other option, I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to enter the debate?
Yeah, I guess, well, I just wanted to understand why a budget bid was necessary to undertake a comprehensive council native vegetation management plan when shouldn't this fall under the scope of routine council operations?
No, not that part.
It's actually a legislative requirement.
I'll just get the
What
the
is-
director to answer your question.
Yeah, right. The reason for the proposal of the budget bid was just because of the cost. Like Councillor Arthur alluded to get that vegetation survey done is $50,000 6 or 7 years ago. So it's probably going to be significantly more than that to have that work done. Have the native vegetation management, sorry, the roadside vegetation management written, endorsed by the Native Veg Council. There's just quite a few steps. And so,
Not business as usual.
yeah, it's not business as usual.
So sorry, through you, Mayor, so with the timber on the side of the road, that is more under the control of Native Veg than it is council.
That's right.
In terms of its removal. Without going through a current policy and like on permit, going to that, and you can do it with those terms and conditions. Otherwise, yeah, it's left there.
So in the Adelaide Hills, the council requires people to clean up their properties ahead of the fire season. Some of the properties, certainly out here, which have a huge amount of native veg on the side of the roads, and I'm going to say down where we are, where it was burnt out a few years ago, there's a lot of really dead and dry wood just sitting there as a problem. Who's liable if that catches on fire? Someone throws a cigarette butt out the window and it catches on fire in all of that scrub. Is that the Native Vegetation Council you'd go to, or would you go to council?
I think
The person who throws
Well, you don't know who that is.
Well, then it's just an act of.
Okay, but if a fire starts in that scrub, which some of
Yeah.
it is very dense and
Yeah.
just waiting to go up,
That can
who's
happen.
held responsible if that's where the fire
So-
starts?
Yeah, private versus public land.
But
isn't it?
private public land, we've got several authorities tell us what to do on our land. One of the very few avenues we have to clean up vegetation is through fire prevention. You'll note along the Dukes Highway, we've done a bit of that. That's probably the most effective way of tackling this particular area. In terms of people just picking timber up off the road reserve, it falls back to the native vegetation branch.
What if it's just cleaning up around your farm?
Well,
On your
cleaning
property.
up and
Or it's
taking
where from your
wood are pretty.
fence outside to the
Yeah,
road?
well, it's interchangeable words.
Yeah, so you're cleaning up your property, you've got a whole lot of timber sitting on your
Yeah.
fence line.
Well,
How
Yeah,
do you clean that up?
you are allowed to clear within a certain distance of the fence without
Fence.
a permit.
for the purpose of permit of looking after your fence.
You don't need a permit to clean up near your fence. What's the spacing?
Metre or, I think it's a maximum metre from memory. Joel, metre?
Reserve 1
Right,
metre,
1 metre.
probably 5 metres.
And
Thank
so,
you.
so what happens, councillor, some stage when we have a bushfire, and Lubke Road's a good example of this, it's really quite silly because there's really only a metre of trees.
Hmm.
Some stage it almost takes a whole swathe on a one-chain road. It's quite a complicated area because unless we have a plan, it's quite difficult to do it. And since we just refer to the state regional plan in terms of our road management debate, depends if the road's a state road too. And really interesting, if you talk to the ARTC, they have a view that it doesn't really matter how close the trains are to the trees are to the train, as long as the train can get through. So it's a very complicated area. But who's liable? Well, it probably becomes an act of God
Or say bullshit.
or say by. But the people that want trees on road reserves are more interested in the trees in their totality, as in
I
for a
understand that.
possum to live in or whatever else,
Fortunately, we don't have possums. We have lots of other.
or whatever.
But I mean, I agree with all the trees that are there providing shade, but these ones that have fallen
Yeah.
dry, like.
The Native Veg Act would cover that. Whether
I bet
you
these
and I
people
like
that
it.
don't live in country areas where there's lots of
Well,
bushfires.
I don't think you were at the workshop with those.
No,
They were a bit more, using the word evangelical was the wrong word.
Circumspect.
No, they were more keen, I was probably the other word I'd use. More keen to save everything than we would as practical people out here.
To the chair, and there's a is often a tension between bushfire management and native vegetation management. And you mentioned the Adelaide Hill, it's classic environment. But as the mayor says, in order to undertake strategic bushfire management that involves the clearance of native vegetation, you need to have that roadside native vegetation management plan. I've had a situation, not in this council, but I had a situation in Berry where there was significant growth of reed river, and they were in an area that had a campground and had a walking track. We wanted to clear the reeds to be able to deal with things bushfire risk, but also light. They're protected under the Native Vegetation Act, and the Native Vegetation Authority said, develop your bushfire management plan, your native vegetation management plan, and then you'll have a look at your ability to do the clearance. You have to step through that.
See.
Anyone else? We're at the mover will close. I'm looking at councillor Arthur. Close. Recommendation is as it reads. Councillors, all those in favour? Those against, it's carried unanimously. Have a break after we do the next two for 5 or 10 minutes, please. Number 13 is Roads and Infrastructure Committee minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of December at Menangie. Someone move that way, please. Councillors O'Hara and Beach. Any discussions?
This is a procedural question, Mayor.
Mhm.
When the committee hasn't met to ratify their own minutes, I've asked this once before and it still blows my mind a little bit. And the same would go for the Canalpin swimming pool one. We're receiving them, but if the minutes were changed at the next meeting, so there was an amendment made to the minutes at the next roads and infrastructure meeting, does that then come back to council again for receiving and noting, or how does that work?
I presume it'd come back again.
Just through the minutes again.
It would come back through the minutes again.
Councillors, I take some confidence from now we are full committees of council as both finance and roads and infrastructure. So if you were to disagree today, you could.
Is that, but can that happen today? You could disagree today?
Well, you would
Because I would
vote
have
to
thought
not
that
receive it if you felt something adverse to the process.
Yeah, just the procedure there confuses me.
Well, because the committee has no authority, once you've received these minutes, the staff have the authority to pursue the agenda items within it.
Okay.
If you follow my logic, at this stage, until today, in theory, they were aware of it and council voted as committee for it, but councillors could come back and do it. Since we are now of a lesser number, we do as councillors have full committee. So I feel confident.
Okay.
We can move forward from there, but if you were in committee and you were convinced some councillors before the next council meeting that something in that thing shouldn't go ahead, you could raise that as a notice, I presume. Councillor Qualman, sorry.
Like a drink.
I'd love one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just looking through the minutes here, questions without notice when I raised the question regarding the broken concrete park benches and culverts at the back of Menangie Council Depot. In the minutes, it says left by the Department of Infrastructure and Transport. Did I miss something? I don't think that was said.
But we were trying to make them responsible. Goals.
No, sorry, I'm just looking for.
You're just looking for it?
Through you, Mayor, I don't think you actually said that, but I think we.
Well, next question, who was the contractor?
I don't know who the contractor was on that job. We're looking at Councillor O'Hara a day. He was there at Menangie. Can't remember who it was.
Through you, Mayor, what we're fairly confident is that they had no responsibility as part of the contract to dispose of them, which is why my understanding is that they went to that particular location. I have to admit, I don't quite understand the focus on this particular pile of rubble, in that it's probably going to be more costly to remove. And if we do bring a report back to you, it'll be saying that it's going to be more costly to remove because of possible contamination. If there's a view that it can be recycled, we will recycle it, but I'm not sure that that will also be a money-saving venture either. It's not an EPA pile of rubble. They have no interest in it. And it's not unsightly in that it's out of the public eye. So at this point, unless council is willing to spend some money to remove it, my recommendation would be we leave it where it is.
It's a big Adelaide chunk down there. It'll be on the council.
Somewhere.
It was part of the redoing up of the Main Street
The
amenity.
question is, did the
And-
contract of the main.
And
street
at that
the time-
stage, we were offered the use of the
Bubble.
the railway, or the roadworks depot, where it's stayed since then.
We were offered, or we offered.
We were offered apparently.
Seems we
Yeah,
took the
so-
wrong deal, councillor. But anyway,
If I may finish, thank
Yeah.
you, Mr Mayor. I'm only asking you the question because ratepayers have been asking
Yeah.
me, that's all. So, yeah.
I think the best path is to wait for a day when we need substantial fill for a project and then consider it as part of it. I think.
Yes.
I know it's been considered about 3 or 4 years ago and the costs were considerable. I would highlight at the end of the day, the costs in replacing infrastructure often don't adequately include removal of the old one. That's my point, and it needs to be budgeted in and not just pretend that it didn't happen.
About it.
Yeah, yes, that's correct, Mr Mayor, and I think we've got to be more aware of that, the changing climate in the regarding the environment and everything. It's not going to get easier to do this. That's right.
No. Okay, anyone else? Recommendation is as it reads, councillors. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. I just might make a point. I feel like council and community was after that committee. It was actually very good. Fairly challenging questions and pretty sharp answers from the councillor O'Hara. That was all right. And I had a good look around at the private public road. No comment. But I actually personally believe our council and the community is working.
Yeah.
People are getting a chance to, and people say to me they learn as much from the questions from other people and then our answers than their own questions. So, okay, one more before we have a quick break, which is, where has it gone? 14.
Swimming pools.
Minutes of the Canalpin swimming pool. Please, someone move that way, please. Councillors Peach and Roundtree, I think I saw. Either want to speak to it, councillors?
No, I have nothing further to add. It was a good meeting.
Okay. There's no further debate. The motion, all those in favour? As against, that's carried unanimously. Can I just we have a 10-minute break. I think lunch or Christmas lunch, call it we like, is at 1 o'clock, but I'm pretty confident we can make that now. 10-minute adjournment, please, Ash.
Okay.
Be well now.
Until it's Christmas.
How's it going, Joel?
How are you?
Getting there.
Please. We're up to 11.1, the Office of the Chief Executive Officer's Information Report. Someone just move that we receive and note that report first for questions, please. Don't rush me, councillors Maidman and Beach. Questions in relation to that report, councillors? Foreman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Page 78 on the hard copy, meetings attended. November the 26th meeting with the Department for Education, Re-Meningie Community Library Project. An update on that, please.
That was a meeting, yeah, with Zoom, really just continuing to progress the conversation about their planning and of the project and where council may fit in terms of the funding arrangements. We've asked them to come and brief council on what they expect the final figures might look like now that they've pretty much settled on what the plans would look like. So that we're expecting them to want to come. They did make a time just 2 weeks ago and cancelled just because I think one of the members was sick. And so we were wanting to get them back before we went to the January meeting, but if that's a time frame for them rather than for us. So if it's not urgent for them, then the briefing will be when they're available, and then council will need to consider what their request might be.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Roundtree.
So in the, number 4, tourism development, the statistics there with the Canalpin Caravan Park, I just noticed that there was a drop from November last year to November this year. And I'm wondering if that's because if the people now who don't need power, having to be parked into a powered site when they don't need it. So it's taking up, because that caravan park is constantly full. We've got some locals doing some stats about what time they come in and what time they go out. But I just thought it was interesting. It's probably the first time since we've put those signs up that we're seeing a reduction in people using those powered sites. And I'd say it's because it's pushed the people who don't need the power into the places where there is power, and those who want power probably can't find a place to park and move on. Anyway, it was just an observation. There's probably nothing you can tell me about it. It's just going to be interesting to keep an eye on that. I thought the report on the visit to Pangarinda by the Mediterranean Garden Society was a great report. I'm not sure who wrote it, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. That was excellent. And also the Cambodian agricultural study team, that was also interesting to read. So I appreciated what those Mediterranean Garden Society people had to say about that. It was things I learned from what they were saying that made me appreciate that park a lot more than perhaps I had before. You've answered the one I was going to ask about the cross-border commissioner. So that one's already been done. The only other question I had was number 8, questions taken on notice. So with the toilets being located 3 kilometres out of the township or north of the township, how will the council ensure that there's adequate signage within the town and before we get to the town heading north to advise that the toilets are now 3 k's further on? Because I'm not sure, I mean, it's great that we've got these toilets, but one of the issues we wanted to solve was people coming into Salt Creek and toileting in places where they shouldn't. And I'm not sure without great signage to say, hold on, go another 3 kilometres, that we're going to achieve it. So I think we really have to make sure that signage is spot on.
Yep, John.
Yeah, through the chair, we will be looking at the signage once the toilets are operational, looking to update necessary signage to make it clear that the toilets are 3 kilometres out of the area.
And I think it's worth, when you're coming into Salt Creek from the north heading south, that when they see that there's a toilet sign, that they're also advised that the township of Salt Creek itself has no amenities. So they might go, well, okay, we won't use the toilets going to Salt Creek, and might go to the shop and use the toilet. So it needs to be, and going 3 k's back again to use the toilet will not be an option for some people. So they really need to know that in Salt Creek, they don't have any amenities for travellers, and that this is their moment.
Through the chair, We can talk to the Department of Transport that I can recall that there are signage saying, no amenities for next X kilometres or last amenities for X kilometres. So we can talk.
And
to
I
them
guess
what
I'm
that's-
labouring the point because I just know that the issue we wanted to resolve may not, without good signage, we may end up not resolving it and back to where we started.
Agree, Mr Mayor, I think all you can do out the toilets, put up signs that says next facilities 100 kilometres.
Yeah.
But it's
And
getting them
it's onto a-
before they get there. So if they look at that sign and go, there's toilets to my right, but I'll go into Salt Creek and use their ones instead and buy a pie. And
Sign says no toilets until the next 100 kilometres.
yeah, it needs to be really
And
clear.
I just tell you, I was there the other day
Hmm?
for the local government meeting. There's a sign that says coffee, toilets, Salt Creek on both sides coming in. And the
Whose sign
van,
is that?
van is open with the, and.
Coffee van.
When we did a tour last year, wasn't it?
Couple of years
We
ago, yeah.
actually
Porta
coffee
toilets.
and used the toilets there.
No, it's a permanent toilet.
And I think
Okay.
to stop businesses,
Yep.
appropriate rules have
And
got
the other
Oh, well, if
thing-
there's something there, then this isn't as big a issue.
That's-
There's something already there.
portable toilet.
Yeah, it's built in there, like it's quite, yeah.
Okay.
And the thing that would help, certain person took that big open sign off, the shop does not open.
That would help.
Anyway, other questions around the CEO's report? There is none. Okay, I have a motion to receive and note the report. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, Corporate and Community Information Report. Someone move that way, please. We receive a note. Councillors Qualman and Maidment, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Roundtree.
There seems to have been quite a bit of staff movement this year, and I'm wondering whether we're still doing exit interviews when employees move on.
We do.
And are we able at some point to get a report on key factors that maybe people are making people want to?
I might just respond in the broader sense, councillor. Unfortunately, some of our staff have got sickness or illnesses that they didn't incur in this business.
Okay.
But I'll let Miles
We can.
comment broadly around that.
Through the chair, one thing that I want to point out, and I think we should be really proud of, is that a few years ago, turnover rate was up towards 20% plus. I'm very, very confident it's well below 10%. And I can only give you anecdotal information. Yes, we do have exit interviews. Also, very importantly, once probation is completed, Bridget has a meeting with new staff members as well. I think that's just as important. Anecdotally, people are leaving for the right reasons. They have other opportunities. They're wanting to, relocate, family reasons, etc. I don't know of any that are leaving because they're dissatisfied with who they're working for, or who they're working with. I think that's really important. It's a good place. That's the feeling we have.
Okay.
And I think that's reflected in the number of applications we get. So we are fielding a number of recruitment positions where, especially in that sort of admin general officer role, we're fielding 50 to 60 candidates, and even though after shortlisting we're still, a dozen or more really good quality candidates, and it's a good situation to be in. It makes it difficult to actually go through and make your choice, but I think our recruitment's been really good. Our difficulty, as with everyone who is every employer who's a bit of a distance from Adelaide, is recruiting for those in-demand positions, like the engineering positions, planning positions and like, and really uni, and also people willing to work in regional areas, even though again, we're only an hour and 15 from the CBD.
Hardly regional sometimes.
I think even that extra 15 minutes makes a difference. Hopefully the growth of Murray Bridge is going to be, helping that as well.
So thank you for that, Miles. I think that actually, that sort of information is really helpful for us as councillors to get a bit of a feel as to how our organisation is going, because I wasn't aware of any of that. So thank you for sharing that. My other question was, with regards to the work health and safety and risk management, the draft mental health and wellbeing strategy, is that something councillors can have a look at as well? Or you said it had gone to staff for comment. Is that something we should be having a look at as well?
So we have a workplace health and safety committee, and all those policies go through. So staff are intimately involved in the development of that. There's probably no reason why that can't be circulated out of session.
Yeah, that's information. All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Other questions? Councillor Peach.
Thank you. So I just had a question regarding the development statistics application, and noting the increase in other, just wondered what's actually captured more broadly in that other category in this graph.
So what page are you on, Councillor?
So this is page 86 numbered internally and a 120 in the overall document.
So you'll see the note under the chart. Other includes domestic sheds, swimming pools, verandas, signage, jetties, alterations and carports.
Sorry, I meant more specifically. Is there a trend around it, or is it just?
I think it's a really good question. Yes, there is a trend, and there's a good reason for it. And it relates, I suppose, partly to the economy, but also partly to policy intervention. So you had a lot of emphasis on support for the building industry, COVID, and so you had the home builder support from the Commonwealth, and that resulted in a significant number of development applications. Essentially, to get that grant, you had to have a development application approved. So that you'd see a good number of houses in this chart 2 years ago, and a lot of those are starting to be built now because of that lag period. But what I'm seeing now is investor confidence, and I'm seeing commercial, industrial activity increasing. I'm seeing more interest in land divisions, inquiries about land divisions, and not necessarily just for residential, for industrial purposes as well. But my impression from where I sit is that large investment is starting to show an interest, quite an interest.
Thank you. Through the chair, that was sort of where I was wondering with my question. Would it be possible in the future to separate that out a bit, just so we can track that sort of growth?
Now, through the chair, we have a state planning system, and we have state data that is meant to be the most reliable and the easiest to use and extrapolate. That hasn't been. So we have a portal that there's still some teething problems with extracting data and presenting that, and really importantly, being comfortable that that data is correct. So yes, in the future, that shouldn't be difficult to do, even to the point where we can provide heat maps as well, so you can see where this activity is. I'd suggest it's probably another 6 months off before I'd be comfortable presenting that.
Yep.
Other questions? There being none, there's a motion there to just receive and note the report. I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Number 3 of them is 11.3 is infrastructure and assets. Can I move that way, please? Leave a note, Arthur and Qualman. Questions?
There's just one question regarding the tamper-proof stainless steel toilet roll holders. I think it gets to the stage that if this vandalism's just going to think, I think as council's just going to have to shut these facilities
Oh, you
and
can't
put
do
signs
that.
up and tell people that's why they shut. You know, this is just getting to stages ridiculous. These were put in just recently as a trial against the others were getting broken on a very regular basis.
Will we be able to put in cameras in?
In the toilet,
Oh, yeah, you can't do
No.
that.
No, you can't do that.
Okay,
No.
bad idea.
you do get in trouble. with the
Yeah,
law.
okay.
Councillor May,
I'm actually outside.
Yeah, probably.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to keep on from councillor Arthur's point, maybe we could go to cheaper toilet roll holders.
Well, we do, with
And,
plastic
better.
ones.
if they're going to get vandalised, so be it. I was actually going
A bit
to
of
ask
fire.
that myself, so. You know, if they're getting vandalised all the time, there's no point having excessively expensive toilet roll
agree.
holders. Might as well just go back to cheap and nasty.
Just a minute, you know, like, it almost thinks this has been happening there regularly, that it's not a traveller that's doing it. And so,
Are
you
you-
know, like, maybe we
Oh,
just shut
wow.
that facility.
maybe,
No.
councillor. Don't know that.
Well, we can't just keep
Right.
changing these things all the time. It's ridiculous.
I would support councillor Maiden's idea and councillor O'Hara, just a piece of wire and make it as cheap as possible. But let's not spend the money.
I'll cut the advertiser up.
Well, you do that, but no, I'm just saying, well, maybe the option is to go cheaper now and not do the fancy. If it's gonna keep happening, it takes away all their fun.
That particular site, the community cleans the toilets would be the point. Probably
But I
to
mean,
deal with.
something less expensive to
Maybe.
replace might be the answer.
Keep in mind that it's not been done under our contract there.
The same thing has happened at Canalpin, has it not, Josh?
Yes.
We put a new stainless steel one in there and it was broken within 3 or 4 days. So, you know, like that, it gets to the stage, we provide the facilities that people can't, we don't supply them, ratepayers supply them. It's the ratepayers paying for all these things. And
And
it's for their own benefit.
Through the chair, it's a fine balance.
Yeah.
because With the wire there and the rolls are easy to take, then, you know, the community will be saying, there's never toilet rolls there. there's
That's a good
never-"
point.
I
Like the
think the
cameras.
cheaper option, potentially where, you know, we can maybe go and buy some bulk ones so that we've got them, so we can quickly replace them. I mean, other than surveillance outside of the facilities, closing them, for periods of time when, yeah, there's a few different options, but potentially we can look at cheaper holders to start with, and go from there.
Okay. Other questions?
Just as a by and by, what are those stainless steel ones cost roughly?
We'll take that on notice.
Take it on notice. That'll be the most.
I think they'll be very
important
cheap.
Question of the year.
Sorry.
Any other questions in relation to the report apart from toilet holders, please? Councillor Peach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just had a question regarding the footpath for stabilisation purposes at the council chambers in Tintinara. Just wondering if we could have an understanding of how that will stabilise the footings.
That one.
Much long talked about subject, this one. I welcome Joel back.
Through the chair, so we got an engineering report there that said we need to prevent moisture getting down between the surrounding soil and the footing of the building. And so the recommendation was to put a concrete footpath to do that around the back side of the building, then to monitor the movement in the wall. I don't suspect it's going to move any further, and then we'll look to repair the wall as necessary.
Okay.
The work that we've done to date is very inexpensive in essence. So, yeah, and if anything, it neatens the area up too.
So through you, so the understanding from the engineer's report is that rainfall erosion was causing the movement of the footings. Is that?
Not so much erosion, more the shrink swell effect, going from moist to dry to moist with rainfall.
This year. Any other questions? There's none.
Sorry,
Quickly.
sorry, one more. Just in terms of the, I see the Tintinara playground that we had the workshop on last week is in this document. Just an understanding, so as councillors, we can take this back to community around what the next steps are there. Is this the public's first look at it? Where are we going from here?
Public consultation process around the fence around the area. Is that what you're saying, Joel?
Through the chair, yeah, this is the public's first look at that little concept. We intend to come down and have a level of engagement with relevant parties to discuss all aspects of what we can potentially deliver at that park, with the view that we have a budget in mind, that we can maximise that budget.
Given we've got the railway crossing and we've got that to deal with and a potential crossing of the highway as well to build into the plan.
And it's staged.
And it needs to be spent by the end of this financial
Thank
year.
you.
'Cause
So-
it's an LRCI process.
So I'll be correct in saying that we are undertaking an informal public consultation process, and that public that may have an interest can reach out to discuss?
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Thank you. Yep.
So there, Joe.
Okay. Anything else? There being nothing, I'll put the motion, we receive and note the report. All those in favour? Those against, that's carried unanimously. Well, one, questions with notice. I have none. So I move to 12.2, questions without notice. Councillor Arthur.
Couple here. I've got the first one's the Carcooma Road, where the first section, where the contractor didn't do the Went Terrace and Carcooma Road intersection. Is that going to be done as part of this next extension or the last extension?
Sure.
Through the chair, we will be looking to seal the first portion of Southern Cross Road late January, early February. We'll look to deal with that then.
Oh, I'm talking about
Yes.
Went Terrace.
Yes. Yes, I'm confirming we'll look to deal with Went Terrace in that first mobilisation of the seal contractor.
Last bit.
Yes.
Okay. Through.
Can I just get that clarified? Did you say you're going to seal Southern Cross Road?
No,
No.
I would interpret what Joel said is that there's two stages to the sealing contract on Carcooma Road. The
Yep.
first stage goes as far as Southern Cross Road. Whenever you do that first, and then you'll go back and deal with this little bit at the edge of town, which was,
Then.
for whatever reason, not quite.
Then.
Got missed.
Yep. Second question, councillor.
Yeah, second, probably three to Josh. The local ratepayers would like to know, why do we continue in these very dry conditions, grading roads, and in their words, putting where you've got snot to put in, you've got no decent reels on the side of the road, and no rollers on behind to consolidate anything that goes in there. And by 2 days, it's worse than it was before you grade it, because you're putting no substantial sort of filling in the potholes. And they've been that dry. It's just incredible. They just want to know, why do we continue? And all that do it is deteriorating the roads.
So, councillor, we're going to take that on notice because it's a very complicated subject. And there's many varied views, and you'd note that in an earlier report today around dry grading was not. I'm also aware of an adjoining council that's said they're going to stop dry grading. My challenge about that is, when is it wet in this district nowadays? Grading, we have a further report to come, as you can see, about rollers. In a couple of months' time, I think. Looking at the director, probably.
To the roads and infrastructure
Committee meeting coming up. So all that will come together around that process.
Under what conditions he's talking?
Is in dry conditions. I would say this, how often are our roads wet when we grade them? I'll leave that thought with you, because realistically, it's probably 10 days a year. Particularly this last year.
Yeah, well, if you look at the results, we've done more grading in October this year than we did last year. And it's been drier.
Well,
Okay, it's something.
our ability to be variable to the weather on wherever the grader is pretty a tough task. But anyway, it's going to come through on this report around it. Your last question.
Yep.
Your third one.
We'll look
Before you
forward.
close that one, so that reactive to the proactive to our roads grading. Waste of time grading the roads in the middle of summer, like Councillor Arthur said.
I'm not going to edit the debate further. I'm just I'll leave it where it sits. Otherwise, we've got a real resource allocation process. Your third question.
The third question is probably the CEO. I see the local government association has got a questionnaire or investigation into Corellas. I hope we will be putting a
We've done it.
submission into that.
For you, Mayor, we've submitted it. That was a couple of weeks ago.
We have put it.
One thing that the local government association board added to their list of strategic projects.
Okay.
Your third thing, fourth thing, you're happy, right? Anyone else? There's no further questions without notice. Move to 13.1 motion. Councillors, I just wait, Councillor Peach. As long as we fully understand our role in public health versus primary health care, and it's in the Chief Executive Officer's report. And it's not very often I would do this, Councillor Peach, I'm sorry to tell you, but point 3 of your motion, I'll leave you as councillors to sort out whether you think that's too bold, whether states have advantage of us in that scenario. We'll move your motion still.
I do want to move my motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seconder.
Or you can get a seconder. Yeah, so you certainly. There a seconder for the motion in its totality? Councillor Roundtree. Righto.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, in the last week, two things occurred. One was that the working group around the health service met with Nick McBride to discuss our progress and the progress of the Lucendale issue. That conversation was constructive, but I think all parties at it realised that we had come to an impasse and weren't progressing. The second thing that occurred is I tried to book a blood test for a fasting cholesterol test through the RMC LHN. And contrary to what we were initially told as a chamber, I was told that I couldn't have that because I didn't need it from them. I could travel. And they said that they provide that service only to those who can't access it elsewhere. And I asked them what that means, and they said, if you've got wheels, you can't have it. And if you've got a medical condition, that may be reasons why you can't travel, and therefore we'll give it to you in your community. So, Mr. Mayor, I put this motion forward in recognition of the deterioration of accessible health services in Tintinara and Kenelpin. That options and outcomes have gone backwards in a digital age, a time where accessibility to care should be easier. It's an absolute indictment on the decision makers involved in these outcomes. I draw the Chamber's attention to the preamble of the Public Health Act. The Public Health Act is an act to promote and to provide for the protection of the health of the public of South Australia and to reduce the incidence of preventable illness, injury and disability. The communities of Tintinara and Kenelpin are now in a position where early intervention and ease of access to care has evaporated. And as the local public health authority, it's time for Council to step in and arrest the degradation of services that are leading to poorer public health. I hope through passing this motion and building on the previous motions of the Chamber, we make it clear to the Minister and the RMC LHN that the return of services and outcomes to the Tintinara and Kenelpin communities is the key and fundamental outcome for this Chamber. If the outcome of this motion is not satisfactory in achieving this change, I'll seek to build a coalition of organisations to bring a statement of no confidence in the conduct of the CEO of the LHN in getting us into this predicament. Mr. Mayor, I move this motion. I'm aware that point 3 could be contentious. we have an obligation to act. We have an obligation to bring this to the minister and say that we are not getting the change that is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roundtree is the seconder. You want to speak?
I need to back up everything Councillor Peach has said. The people of Canalpin are also really unhappy with what's happening. And it's just a disgrace. We're going backwards when we should be able to go forwards. And so if we don't start pushing back real hard, this will just sit there and simmer along and nothing will happen. And in 12 months' time, 2 years' time, we'll be having these same conversations. And meanwhile, the people that need access to this stuff in those towns are not getting it. So we have to act fast, go in hard and really try and get some outcomes for these towns. So I 100% support this one.
Okay, councillors, the motion is moved all three parts. It's open for debate.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the motion as is, except for I don't believe that the council is in the position to start offering the services that should be available. And as part 3 says, seeking a budget allocation, I can imagine what the budget allocation would be against the costs that will be involved. You're going to have professional staff to do this. I don't know where we'd get them from. I agree with the motion wholeheartedly, 1 and 2, but unfortunately, I don't think council should be in position to go into healthcare, which we were virtually saying here, and it's to me it would be a very big albatross around our neck because you don't know what it would end up costing. So I'd support it in 1 and 2, but not 3.
Okay, I'm going to let some more people speak if they wish and then ask you if you wanted to move an amendment. Councillor O'Hara.
I probably agree with Councillor Arthur in reading that. Yeah, I don't think it's our business really to be running any business, but really apart from waste, rubbish, roads. So yeah, I'm the same as Councillor Arthur. I'm afraid I support it wholeheartedly, and I support what Councillor Peach is trying to do wholeheartedly, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Maidment.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. For me, I don't think it'd hurt to write to the Minister for Health and get a response to the motion as is. What we would do with any budget allocation comes at a later date. But I don't think it hurts to write to them and express anger or whatever, help. And I agree with this motion in whole.
Okay. Let's hang on. I'm going to look at the last councillor, see if he wants to speak. Doesn't have to.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I congratulate all the effort that Councillor Peach has gone into preparing this motion, and he spoke very well on this topic. And I think it's the concern of all us for the deterioration of the health services. So I'm willing to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Roundtree, you got a question or something?
I have a question. Do we have an idea of what the monetary budget allocation is that's given? Because I suggest that if whatever that amount is that is being given to this group would also then help us to deliver a similar service. So I'm not thinking this should cost council more than what we should be getting in if we get the funds. But I mean, that's down the track.
As a point of clarification, Councillor Peach.
If I can. So I think this will promote, the intent of this is to actually ask that question. So the RMC LHN receives funding for the entire district. I think this will highlight what should potentially be allocated in resource to Tintern and Canalpin, what it's costing through the travel for 2.5 hours each way for 10-minute appointments. So I think in highlighting this to the Minister, that's part of the intent behind it, that we actually try to find out what that should be for our region. So that's a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, given given not everyone's totally happy with this. Councillor Peach, number 3, if your intention was to find out what it costs, we reword number 3.
Mr. Mayor, it's not just to find out what it costs. I think there needs to be some sort of
Line in the sand.
line in the sand stick, for want of a better word. There needs to be something that actually makes the minister look at this and go, there is a serious problem here and it needs to be addressed. And I think in asking for this outcome, and I'll note I did put the word facilitate in there as well, but the system has fallen down, and I think this really invites the question of what's next. And I think it does need further investigation from the minister around why we've ended up in this situation.
Okay. I got some.
Do we check?
I'm going to invite an amendment. I'm going to, because I'm sensing we're nearly there. Councillor Arthur, you're going to consider an amendment or not?
If we could change the wording of part 3, I was just going to get to it now. So virtually what we were asking for, instead of saying what we want to do there, we want to find out how much. No, an indicative indication of the allocation, which could be presented or provided to council if they were to supply the services at the Titinara and Canalpin depots.
Could I perhaps, if after in that final paragraph, if after the word "and for the council," if we added "and for the council or another party to facilitate, provide community nursing services," would that, because that doesn't put us in a situation where we would automatically end up in doing it, but for the council and another party to facilitate, would that satisfy some of the concerns?
So they wouldn't have a distinct allocation for
Correct.
Titinara, Canalpin. They would have an overall budget figure because they got the whole area and everything fluctuates, of course, and supply and demand within the area. And the reason I'm saying that the council to facilitate providing the community nursing services, you've got to appoint a nurse, and they don't come through. They'll have to have a car because they do home visits as well as at the things. They have to have the facilities, if they're blood testing, all these things.
I need to get you to the point, debate around either a variance in his motion or an amendment.
Yeah.
I thought both of you were heading towards a compromise. Councillor Peach is the mover.
Mr. Mayor,
Words which I think come up on the screen.
I'm happy for that as a compromise, if it helps. I don't think it takes away from the oomph of the original intention with this.
All right. Looking at, you still hold the floor in terms of the motion. If you're happy with that little variance, I'll look at the seconder.
I'm happy with that variance.
We've got that recorded, right?
Let's see.
I'm trying to read 10 things. Councillor Arthur, I'm giving him some time to propose an amendment, but I think he's halfway there with the variance.
Well, sort of half.
Well, you've got about
Don't
half.
ask working with the back up.
Don't waste any time. Lunch is coming for Christmas.
Through you, Mayor, at the moment, I think there is enough support for that motion as it stands right now. I mean, we're pushing to get an amendment, but Councillor Coleman, Councillor Maidment, myself and Councillor Peach have all said we're happy with this one as it stands. So why are we pushing for an amendment?
Not pushing, I'm giving you opportunity. There's a bit of a difference.
Okay. Potato. Yeah. It feels like you're encouraging it.
I encourage a lot of things. But I'm not going to wait too long because Councillor Arthur, I'm well aware the an amendment could be lost.
I'll just write to the Minister for Health and Wellbeing seeking an indication of the budget allocation that could be provided for the Titinara Canalpin Health Centres provided for council or another entity to facilitate and provide the community nursing services on an ongoing basis. Did you get all that?
So are we doing an amendment?
He's potentially doing an amendment.
Also, could you read that again, please, so we can just put it in that last paragraph for people to look at?
Can you reread it, please?
Can you reread it, councillor Arthur?
Yeah, can't read my own writing here. Seeking indication of budget allocation for American Health Services. That could be provided. To facilitate, no, sorry, to council or another entity. To provide or facilitate, provide community nursing services on an ongoing basis. A budget allocation.
Ordered it down. Yes. Yes, no.
Councillor,
Broad
is
enough, I think.
that what your words are?
That's, yeah, it's got to be reasonably. Yeah, probably the answer you're going to get back is what I address.
Would be theory any from the original one.
A little bit.
Steady. It's going to help.
But then what happens if they are all, so where's it from?
So, councillor, are you proposing as your amendment to replace point 3 with point?
Yeah.
Happy with points 1 and 2 as a still? You happy with points 1 and 2? Still to be?
Yeah.
Your amendment is points 1 and point 2 and replacing point 3 with point 4.
Yeah, with that.
So you're moving that as an amendment,
Yeah, all right, sorry.
right?
Yep.
Is there a seconder for the proposed amendment?
I asked Mr. Mayor.
You can ask, yes.
What changes?
Just a little bit. If it was substantive, I couldn't have it as an amendment. It's not as prescriptive. I'm going to give you about another 5 seconds, otherwise the amendment will lapse.
That's all.
Right, the amendment has lapsed for want of a seconder. We return to the motion. If everyone has spoken, I think I have probably given everyone else. I'm going to give it to the mover to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope the addition of or another party does go some way to alleviate the concerns about council entering a space that we are not familiarly in. In closing, I'd like to point out Division 4 of the Public Health Act, and it's in the document today. The function of councils within this Act, 37(1) states that we are the local public health authority for our area. 2A says that a function that's conferred upon us is to take action to preserve and protect and promote public health within its area. I feel strongly that given the actions of the LHN, it's now open to us to fight to preserve and protect health within our area. I think we do a good job at promoting it through various mechanisms of the council, whether that's to do with outbreaks around mosquito-borne disease or other activities. And I know that would normally be where we'd sit with this. But I do believe that through the general reduction in service, we are now creating a broader public health issue in the townships of Tintinara and Kenelpin, and that it is responsible on us to take action to remedy that. So closed.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor. So everyone's aware that the motion is, as it is on the screen now, which is at a slight variance to the original motion in your agenda. All councillors aware of that? Only a slight variance.
Okay.
Without, we're right, Ashley? Thank you. So councillors, you can all see it on the screen? Sure of it? Right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Carried with all councillors except councillor Arthur voting for it. So it remains carried. Thank you, councillors, for your consideration and good nature. 13.2, motions without notice. There is none. Number 14, minute action lists. Councillors? Questions? On the countdown clock, councillors. No minute action list. None. For those watching the live stream, please be advised the meeting is about to move into confidence and the live stream will stop. For those who wish to view the end of the meeting, where's it go, Ash? Where's the next page? End of the meeting, the video will be available on YouTube after today's meeting. I'm just going to wait for the stop of the recording, councillors.